Hello photographers. Today in Photoshop is going to be all about the vignette. Vignette simply means a gradual transition on the edges. So it's a softening of the edges in some way, shape, or form. Now by softening I don't mean necessarily blurring. It just means that there's a transition from your center of interest to the outside edges. Oftentimes it's darker. So let's start first by looking at some examples. Let's go to File, Open. We're going to go to our Courses folder, Art. We're going to go to the Yearbook Lessons files, and there's 4 files that we're going to open here. So as a reminder, to open up multiple files that are in a row, you simply click one time on the first, release the mouse key, hold down your Shift key with your finger, and then click on the last file, and it will select all of them, and then simply click the Open button. And that should open all 4 of these images. So let's first look at the vignette example number 1. So this is what I mean here by typically speaking, a vignette means it's darker on the outside edges, but there's no clear stopping point. It slowly or gradually goes from dark to light. So this is the first example. This is our second example. Again, you can see it here. Sometimes in addition to darkening the edges, they'll also either desaturate the outside edges or overly saturate the center of interest so that your color becomes more intense as well as it gets closer to the center of your image or to the center of interest. However, sometimes a vignette is not a darkening, sometimes it's a lightening. So you can see it here, they've actually made it a little bit lighter and they've blurred it slightly. You can go ahead and close these 3 example files if you wish, and we should be on the first file. It's simply called vignette. Alright, let's get started by saving this in our cloud, saving it in your edited photos, vignette, and then add your name and then click save. Alright, so there's lots of different ways you can do a vignette. I'm going to show you a couple different ways, doing a couple different things here. But the easiest way is to simply use this tool here, which is called a marquee tool. And you want the elliptical marquee. Probably not the rectangular. However, if you want to play today, you can grab the rectangle. But we're going to click and hold to pull this drawer out, and we're going to select the elliptical marquee tool. So just in case, if yours happen to have had the rectangle on top, click and pull the drawer open. The elliptical is the second one down. Now, what a marquee selection does is it confines the changes that we make to a selected area. If I were to click and drag, I'm just going to have you watch this. So if I were to click and drag, I've got a selection here. So now if I go up to any of my adjustment commands, so let's say I'm going to go to hue and saturation, and I'm going to bump the saturation up. Notice how it's affecting the area within this. And it's not just hue and saturation, any of my adjustment commands. It's going to confine it to those borders. Alright. I can also inverse this. So if I actually want to make changes to the outside, I would simply inverse the selection by going to Select, Inverse, and now it's the area around my bird. So if I were to go to Image, Adjustments, go back to that hue and saturation and change that. So now it's affecting the outside margin. Okay. But I want you to notice it's a very sudden change. This is not a vignette because it doesn't gradually change from one color or one value to another. Instead, we need to feather this. Alright, so to feather our vignette, and I want you to follow along here, is we need to, up here in our options bar at the top, we need to add a feather. Now, the amount that you feather depends on the image size that you have. If you have a large image size, you're going to want a bigger number for your feather. If you have a low res image, you're going to want a lower. So if you want to check this, we're going to check our resolution. We're going to go up to Image, Image Size, and it's going to tell us what our resolution is. My resolution here is 240, which is a print size resolution. Alright, sorry about that interruption. Let's go ahead and get back. So let me reopen that. So again, I'm going to go to Image, Image Size. So as I was saying, this is a 240 resolution, which is print size. It's also a 5 by 3 inch image, which is pretty good. If you happen to have an image that would say 72, you would probably want a lower feather. That's an upload size. That's that's for screen content. So it's actually not a very big image, but we've got a decent sized image here. So we're going to put a feather of 100 pixels to start with. It's going to sound like a lot, but it's really not. And I want you to click and drag a selection over your bird here. Now, once I release this, if I come in the center, I can move that around. So if I need to, I can reposition it. If I don't like what I did, I can deselect it by going one of two ways. I can either go to select, deselect, or as you can see, the keyboard shortcut here is Control D. All right, but I'm going to say mine is okay. Before we make changes though, we need to flip this because we want to affect the outside, not the inside, at least not just yet. So let's go to select, inverse. Now let's give this a try. Let's see how this goes. So let's go to image adjustments and we're going to go to brightness and contrast. There's lots of different ways and you can play around today with any of these options that you want to, but we're going to start with brightness and contrast and we're going to take the brightness down. So you're going to see the outside edge is going to start to get darker and you're going to see that it's not a sudden stop anymore. Okay, so go ahead and click OK. So we've just darkened this. We're going to inverse the selection back. So it's back on our little duck here, and we're going to do the opposite. We're going to make this a little bit brighter. So I'm going to take the brightness of this up. And we're going to go back, and I'm going to take my saturation up just a little bit. And now let's see what that looks like. Excellent. Okay, so I want to show you a couple more things. So before I show you a couple more things, I just want you to share this with me. And then I want you to open up one of your own pictures. So I'm going to open up one of my pictures. I'm going to open up a homecoming picture. It is homecoming week after all. So I'm going to open up. So you can email yourself a photo. You can open up one of your homecoming photos that you've taken, or one of your other ones. Let's pick a lovely photo here of our librarian and her assistant. All right. Before I do my vignette, I'm going to run my auto tone. I'm going to run my auto color. I don't like my auto color, so I am going to fix my color manually. This is review. We've done all of this. I'm going to say it's a little too yellow, so I'm going to bump up my blues just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to check my image resolution. You don't always have to check the image size, but I like to. So notice this is, I'm glad I opened this one up because I want to show you. This is a low res. However, it's 41 by 55 inches, which is a big picture. So I'm actually going to take my feather up even higher to 200. And for this one, instead of making my outside black, I'm going to inverse this. I'm actually going to make it lighter. I'm going to go to my brightness and contrast. I'm going to take the brightness up a little bit. I'm also going to take my saturation down a bit. And I'm going to blur this thing. So this is a new one. So I'm going to go to image, go to filter. And we've been to this gallery before, okay, because we've applied a surface blur before. I'm just going to apply a different blur. I'm going to apply something called the Gaussian blur. So on your image, you flipped it, you've made it lighter, you've desaturated it, and now I'm going to blur this. And I'm going to click OK and deselect. So there's a slightly different vignette. I want you to save this in your cloud. Under edited, I want you to call this vignette 2 and then with your name. And then again, you're going to share this with me. So you've shared 2 files with me. You've shared this vignette, which is darker, lighter, and saturated in the center. And then this one, which is lighter on the outside and blurred. So 2 of those, and then go back to Google Classroom and hit mark as done. Good job with your vignettes.